All right. In terms of retention, what we found was, not surprisingly, that professional learning opportunities offered by school authorities was seen to be an important part of retaining school educational assistants. Once you hired them, that was great, but you needed to find ways of making sure that they would feel like they belong. What we found, though, when I asked the question, like what kinds of professional learning opportunities were provided to EAs, about 50% of the school authorities responded. They said, well, we provide between 1 and 3 sessions per year. Now, a session could be a full day, could be half a day. That wasn't specified, but there was dedicated time 1 to 3 times a year for EAs. The other half of the school authorities indicated that they provided between 4 and over 7. In one case, it was 1 session per month for educational assistance. And so there was this range of professional learning opportunities provided to EAs across the respondents. The general sentiment then, if I could just sort of sum this up, was that school authorities hire for heart and attitude, and that they would then provide um, opportunities for ongoing learning and professional learning through their school district, or extended out to opportunities beyond the school authority. And you're going to hear about some of those opportunities later today. So we hire for the heart, but the demands are really high for EAs. The greatest, when asked what was the greatest need for professional learning, school authorities indicated that they felt it was important to provide specialized clinical and pedagogical knowledge and skills, and that tended to be the kind of uh, uh, learning opportunities they provided to EAs. When it comes to actual operational reality, addressing the school culture and context was also seen to be very important. And it was felt that EAs needed to be included in collaborative meetings regarding student needs. Uh, they needed to be part of a team, a multidisciplinary team, which might have included the psychologists or OTs, PTs, speech language people, that sort of thing. That educational assistants were seen to be as important to be part of that whole team because of the information they provided to the team. What they also found in terms of addressing school culture and context was paid professional learning time was an important aspect of retaining educational assistance. It's a recognition of the time that they are committing to their own learning, but also to the fact that they are making a difference in the lives of students. There was also a need for collaborative professional learning, meaning that there was a desire for EAs to be part of collaborative teams, and that um, educational assistants would also meet with other educational assistants in collaboration to share strategies, ideas about how they could work more effectively with students that they are working with. And in some instances, some of the school authorities talked about developing a community of practice, meaning that there would be a community of EAs that would be able to meet regularly throughout the school authority. And so this was a variable practice, but this came through the survey information. In terms of the focus group results, the there was definitely an acknowledgement of the complexity of students and classrooms and families and their needs, and that EAs are put in a challenging position, as of course are other professionals, teachers, and other parts of the multidisciplinary team. But for EAs specifically, the complexity was seen to be a challenge. The focus group participants said there really needs to be some professional learning and capacity building that has to happen, and that school authorities themselves did not always have the resources in order to be able to achieve that. They needed to work with other school authorities or with other organizations that would provide professional learning resources. They felt that uh, EAs needed to be part of that collaboration and multidisciplinary approach to working with children, because the value they provide in terms of specific knowledge of students that they're working with was seen to be valuable. So and finally, focus group felt that the participants felt that there needed to be some system level and structural um, uh, challenges addressed. And this is a very difficult one because this involves resources like funding shortfall, for example. There needed to be a leadership buy-in, meaning there need to be more than leaders in a school or in a school authority saying, well, EAs are important. They needed to demonstrate it. So it had to move beyond lip service into actual uh, working with alongside EAs, or that EAs felt that they were working with and alongside the educational teams. There was also a feeling that there was some isolation for certain EAs. In some cases, they might have been the only person working with a student or a small group of students, and they would feel quite isolated. And so, ways in which school authorities could address that was seen to be an important part of the work that they were needed to do. There was also, this came through very strongly in the focus group, that there needed to be some kind of peer-to-peer support or mentorship across the school, but also across the school authority, mentoring or coaching with people in similar roles, and that these were non-hierarchical, meaning this wasn't a supervisor providing mentorship, but rather this was someone who was seen to be walking or working alongside of a person. And they would then, that advice and support was certainly welcomed. In terms of the study itself, I did provide a discussion area or a discussion section, and it really opens up some important conversations from a specifically a leadership perspective. The notion that the recruitment and retention continue to be challenges is I know it's stating the obvious. It's likely an understatement. This is an ongoing challenge, and even though there are resources now making their way into school authorities to address shortages of EAs and teachers, it's an ongoing challenge and will continue to be. And the only way that this can be addressed is more long-term types of strategies in terms of how to bring in and garner support and system-wide encouragement for people to see the role of EAs as valuable and respected. So the challenges that need to be addressed, of course, is stable and sustained funding. Part of it is provincial, but it also speaks to how are resources within school authorities distributed in such a way that EAs have a role to play that is seen to be valued. There needs to be ongoing and collaborative professional learning, uh, leadership support and commitment beyond lip service, as I said earlier, and integrated. And one of the things that came through really strongly was this notion of an integrated province-wide standard or supports for EAs. And this one is very challenging. I raise it because this is what the survey respondents and the focus group participants stated, as well as what came through in the literature. This is an ongoing challenging one because the notion of having standards province-wide is really important and can be well received. It also then can make it more challenging to hire or recruit or and retain EAs. And so this is what this is a summary of what I've provided, and I'm going to hand it over to the people in the field who really know who are making this happen. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Over to you, Raymond.
Thank you, Edgar. We really appreciate the research you shared with us and all of the work that you did there for CAS. We're just going to pause here for a moment and we're going to open up the chat line, or if you want to unmute and or raise your hand and ask some questions, this is the time just on the research. So I'll just pause and see if anybody would like to ask Edgar any questions or make any comments. All right. I
Okay.
think we're good to go.
People want to hear from the field. I think that's really an
Yeah,
important part of it. Yes. Thank you.
absolutely. And what you've presented to, I think, is a sentiment that is shared across the province too. So many are familiar with the challenges that we're facing. So let's move on and building on this research, we now welcome Dave Lagrandeur and Kimberly Wright from Horizon School Division. And this will be done in two parts. David is going to start first and talk about the systems level, and then we will have a school level practice, stories of practice being shared.
Okay, thanks very much, Raymond, and also Edgar. Just a quick note before I jump in here. In terms of the research that you shared with the group, certainly corroborated a lot of what we're seeing in our division and some questions that were coming up. So look forward to sharing a little bit more here. I'm Dave Lagranger, Director of Learner Services for Horizon School Division. Just a brief background, I guess I'm concluding almost my 24th year in education. Taught for the first 12 years of my career in Lethbridge Public, born and raised and still reside here. And moved out to Warner to be a principal, and continued that career into Tabor as well. And this is my 5th year as Director of Learner Services. Within my portfolio, I have inclusive education as well as technology. And I have not found a cast member that shares that portfolio. So I guess, and Kimberly would corroborate, I must be a bit of a unicorn. So anyways, that's a bit about me. I'll show an image of Kimberly. I'll let her introduce herself when she's speaking, but I'll just speak a little bit about her. She's a vice principal and learning support teacher at Milk River Ridge School. She is an innovative leader a terrific collaborator in our school division. She's definitely an up and comer. She's not looking to apply to any other divisions, so I'm sorry. You'll get to know her pretty well here in this presentation, but really fortunate. You're going to hear the best stuff from Kimberly in terms of some amazing things that she's led in her school to really build capacity uh, and a sense of belonging for educational assistants. So looking forward to her part. I'll get through mine relatively quickly here. Again, I'll speak a little bit about the system level, and then Kimberly will jump into a story of practice from Milk River Ridge School. Just a bit of background about our school division. We're roughly 3,500 students with increasing diversity. A large segment of our population is Low German Mennonite, and we've seen an increase in immigration over recent years. We are welcoming students with Indian background, Filipino background, Tunisia and Mexico in recent months. We have 18 schools, and it's probably hard to see on the map, but our central hub, if you want to call it, is Tabor, about 30 minutes east of Lethbridge in the south. And we go as far down as Milk River in terms of our southern area schools, and then we head up to all the way to Lomond. So I guess if you were at Lomond and you were heading to our southernmost school, it would be about a little over 2 hours in between areas. So some geographical challenges. Over the past few years, we've definitely encountered the staffing challenges that Edgar highlighted across the province with respect to teachers, recruiting teachers, retaining teachers, and in terms of this conversation, educational assistants as well. Most of our educational assistants would have no training with respect to what they come to us with. They've got experience in life in a lot of cases, but no educational training with respect to supporting the most complex students. What we equip them with when they get started or had equipped them with, supporting individuals through valued attachments, mostly a philosophical approach to providing a relationship-based engagement with students that they would support, various occupational health and safety trainings. Those are, offered through a public works online system. And then other specific professional learning opportunities through the year. Some things that we were hearing both from schools and educational assistants. Our EAs need more training. They're not equipped to manage the needs of the students that they're supporting. Our most recent hire graduated from high school last June, and they're supporting our most complex students. And this was the big one. Dave, we've had another resignation. So our schools were really looking for, we need to do something to provide a base or a background for our educational assistants. They're feeling alienated. We're bringing them into schools and saying, okay, here's a half an hour with the learning support teacher or the admin team, and this is the student that you're going to be supporting. So we knew there was a significant concern with how we were providing support at the division level. We just didn't necessarily have an answer about how to respond. Another thing that we noticed again with the significant increase in students with severe diagnoses, again, 30% over 2 years. Lots of questions about, being able to provide academic support for our mild moderate students. And that role of the general assistant, where an extra set of hands could sit with a small group of students and provide numeracy or literacy support, just that extra nudge that a student might need. We lost the ability to provide that support. Like I said, the level of complexity has increased so significantly that we're relying on teachers to differentiate accordingly, which is a challenge, of course, as well. And then educational assistants providing significant supports to the most complex students. So again, how are we going to respond to the changing realities? One of the best parts about being in CAS that I've certainly appreciated over my 5 years is the opportunity for collaboration. We in Zone 6 have a very close-knit group. I'm fortunate to be able to connect with other directors, assistants, and associate superintendents that are involved in inclusive education. We have a Southwest collaborative that helps us to, I guess, provide staff, including occupational therapists, SLPs, physiotherapists, teacher for the deaf and hard of hearing, teacher for the blind and visually impaired, at a shared cost. We don't have enough students that would fit in that category to hire a single individual. So we put into a collaborative and we solve a lot of problems that way and have the opportunity to connect about them. Anyway, that's what led me to learn about the partnership between Alberta Education and Childcare and Edmonton Public Schools with the educational assistant internship opportunity. But I've included a bit of information. I'm sure many of you have heard of this. If you haven't, it's been a real game changer for our division and for our educational assistants and ultimately our students as a result. So a bit of background. The program was designed to provide an internship opportunity within Edmonton Public for ultimately developing capacity in beginning educational assistance. There's a bit of almost a grid or a step process to go through in Edmonton with respect to becoming a full-fledged educational assistant. This is one of the pieces. So they developed videos, discussion guides, scripts, and assessments connected to the bullets that are listed there. The orientation is just supporting diverse learners, and then supporting students with complex behavioral needs. Well, that ticks a box for us. Supporting students learning English as an additional language, that ticks another box for us. Literacy, mathematics, supporting autistic students, supporting students with anxiety. So a number of pieces. It was like, oh my goodness, Eureka, we've got something that we're going to be able to provide. The three parts are the modules, obviously, the learning. Another significant component was the community of practice. So an opportunity for participants to engage in structured groupings and experiences and to build collective expertise, to ultimately to talk about what they're learning and what it looks like in their setting. And then finally, the coaching component where the coach acts as a mentor to model the practice and guide learning of those enrolled in the program, and they're a liaison between schools and system leadership. Now, the big piece here is Kelly Ossolies. She's the lead contact for Edmonton Public in this. She's an educational assistant by trade. She now works out of one of their division offices. And she is really the lead and the driver of this internship opportunity. So she led the pilot and continues to lead pilot opportunities. We arrived in the second year of this pilot opportunity, which was kind of fantastic for us because it really allowed us to. Kelly was super flexible with what it could look like and considered context with respect to that. Again, ultimately, this was the standard for what it was an ideal model for how to offer the pilot and the program in school divisions, but we're a smaller division. So here's what it looked like for us. We started off, we wanted to consult with our school-based admin to talk about, what this might look like, what we might be able to offer. In terms of our context, we made a proposal to the full admin group. The initial proposal was what we would call the Cadillac model. So we had, we planned about a $90,000 budget where we'd be able to hire a coach. We had someone picked out. We have a behavior consultant and had a behavior consultant in the division that was going to lead that. Time to pay our EAs to kind of go through the programming, including again our geographical constraints, which would have meant at certain points gathering in Tabor. So there were some pieces there, and then this was pre-budget, just budget planning, and then the budget was released as you all experience as well, and we had to adapt. Okay, we had to look at it a little bit differently in terms of, okay, we're not going to be able to commit this level of budget towards it. So, what could it look like for us? So here's how we adapted. We offered a pilot in our division, and it was a voluntary opportunity for our staff. And we didn't look necessarily at beginning educational assistants. We targeted educational assistants that had over 5 years experience with us. And part of the goal was, feedback in terms of, hey, is this something that you think would be of value to all of our educational assistants? The communities of practice we lined up in terms of being some level of in-person, and we also created some virtual opportunities to connect. And I guess our educational assistants experienced a downgrade in the coach opportunity. I became the coach for the delivery of the in-person learning and also connecting virtually. So it really was kind of a serendipitous opportunity for me. And I think for our system level leadership, as I literally had a direct line with 40-ish educational assistants, and the learning that I got in terms of what they were really looking for and what they felt the division needed to know, and some of those pieces was terrific. it throughout, in terms of some of our successes and challenges, again, it really empowered our educational assistants. They felt like they had a base and a foundation, and mostly an opportunity to connect and consult with other educational assistants. Um, who knew that collaboration opportunities for educational assistants would be deemed as valuable as they are for all of us, whether it's teachers, administrators, cast members, or otherwise, coming together to talk about, what's going on in your system, in your school, in your context is so valuable. And this was really, kind of the first opportunity that our educational assistants really felt that they had that. We had 35 of 43 staff members who entered the pilot complete it. Now, I'll just say that there were some withdrawals for personal and health reasons, but most who participated really indicated that they enjoyed the opportunity. They felt like they'd learned. They felt like they'd created connections with other people in other schools. And the biggest thing, and it got a full purple highlight here, and Kimberly's going to talk more about it here shortly, was that schools began to see a change, and it sort of triggered pockets of schools starting to invest in their EAs. Some of the challenges that we found, our virtual sessions were voluntary opportunities from 4 to 5, and what we found out is, a number of our educational assistants had other jobs. So they're leaving school and going to work in another setting, and weren't able to participate in that. And another thing that came in our conversations, again, where I found significant value, was that the EAs reported, "Hey, this is fantastic, but what about if the teacher that we are supporting isn't isn't on the same page with this type of learning?" So that's significant, and that's something that we're continuing to try and bridge. So we had an opportunity to refine. We're in the second year of offering the learning modules to our educational assistants. We determined that, in terms of making sure that we had a chance to have everyone in person, and compensating our educational assistants for the time connected to the professional learning, we built it over a 2-year cycle. Now, again, it's not perfect, but it works in terms of our division. So we're able to we started it off this year with a day and a half in August, where we brought our educational assistants in. Now we start the week before Labor Day. Our students start before Labor Day, so when I say August, yeah, it's like August 21st and 22nd. We brought EAs in, and then we had a November professional learning day, and then a March professional learning day where we brought them in. So we're partway through our learning, and we'll continue into our second year with a repeated process to finish the modules. We're also in discussions at this point about starting another cycle at the beginning of this upcoming school year. Those are kind of the experiences that we've had. Again, we've found it to be really positive in terms of the feedback that we've received from educational assistants and our EAs. Anyway, I'll turn it over. I'm taking a bit too long. Raymond, I think you're going to pop in here.
Yes. Thank you, David. Well, thank you so much. You in your presentation there's a lot of great stuff that that you yourself have has identified. Things like, you had to adapt some of your plans. Interesting that you started with your EAs with 5 years plus, which gave you a lot of feedback to go forth and prepare for some of your not so experienced educational assistants. And really appreciate that you committed to this work and you highlighted even your own learning journey, which was fantastic. But before we move on to Milk River's school, let's just take a moment to reflect on Horizon's journey at the system level. We do have a few questions there just to prompt some of the conversation during this time. And I'm just going to open it up, and please raise your hand if you want to ask any questions to David at this point. Sorry, I'm not sure. Rogan, can you help with that? I'm not sure where that's coming from.
I believe it might have been like an announcement coming through David's like school district,
All
like the
right.
background.
Sorry,
Okay.
just reading the question. Yeah, Nancy, Um, I'm not sure if it connects to if school divisions are going to get any money to support this further. I know that Edmonton Public continues to actually add and open the modules up. So I couldn't comment on that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, thank you. We've been trying to get an answer to that because they made the announcement and it was like there's more money so divisions can do this. But as you indicated, there can be barriers, financial barriers. I know there's ways around it, but it would be great to know if we could access some of that money at the division level.
Let us know if you find it.
We're trying. So far, no
Yeah.
answer.
Thank you, Nancy. We'll go to Hugh.
Hi, David. Thanks for your presentation. It sounds very familiar to what we're experiencing. So it sounds like you started off with the Edmonton internship, and then you sort of used the modules on your own to create your own local communities of practice instead of engaging with, a handful of learning assistants in your division. You've given an opportunity for all to participate. Is that correct?
We didn't well, hi Hugh, good to see you. We didn't we didn't open it up to all. So our first year was a pilot. The 5+ years experience was the criteria, and we were going to cap it at 50. We got about 45, as I mentioned. In our second year, our plan was again we could accept up to 50, and we had I think 37 or 38 apply for it. We would do the same here, hopefully in the fall, and get another 40 EAs, and ultimately, I know there'll be some, new hires and whatnot over the course of years, but we feel like if we're able to retain that we'll get kind of the bulk of that group with this foundational piece.
So are you still engaged with the internship, or are you sort of just taking it on yourself?
Yeah, so part of the internship, I participated with other divisions that were kind of going through the pilot. Kelly Osselies led that, so the commitment for me as a coach was to join like a monthly session virtually, just to really kind of debrief about experiences and what it looked like um, in the division as we were working through it. But outside of that, it was really hands off in terms of Edmonton's involvement. It was, we were provided the flexibility to kind of determine what it would look like and how we could make it work in our context.
Thanks, David.
You bet.
All right. Hey, we are going to just because of time, we're going to carry on. So we now are going to invite Kimberly for our next story of practice. Over to Kimberly.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. As Dave mentioned earlier, I'm Kimberly Wright, and I am the Vice Principal and Learning Support Teacher at Milk River Ridge School. I have been in the field of education for 9 years now, and I've spent 8 of those years working with Horizon School Division. I started my teaching journey as a kindergarten teacher and spent many fabulous years working in kindergarten alongside some of the most incredible education assistants and students and families. And 3 years ago, I transitioned to the role of Vice Principal and Learning Support Teacher at Milk River Ridge, which is really where this story of practice begins. So I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about Milk River Ridge School. We are a small rural school. We have students in kindergarten through grade 12, and we also have an early learning program that runs out of our school for students who are 3 and 4 years old. We have roughly 216 students and 12 teachers, and we have 10 EAs that work in our K through 12 context, with a few additional EAs working in our early learning program. When I started out in Milk River, I was tasked with overseeing educational assistance in our building, including working with my school principal to go through their hour allocation sheets, determine needs of students in the school and best fits for EAs in different classrooms. And part of that piece was also providing training and professional learning opportunities for EAs. My first meeting ever with the EAs at the school, I asked them, what do you need from leadership to feel supported and feel successful in your role? And the response that I was given really was the driving force for the project that happened afterwards. And that was that our EAs felt really well loved by teachers and community members. They felt really supported by the school and the community. However, they didn't feel like they always had a seat at the table when it came to important conversations about supporting students in the classroom. And they really wanted to be part of that conversation and have an active role in creating plans for student success, in having those conversations about student success. And so to support the EAs with this endeavor, and also to look at how we can provide training that's focused on recruiting and retaining the wonderful EAs that we have, we really took kind of a two-pronged approach. The first part of it is looking at professional learning for EAs. And we wanted to focus on role clarity, including the development of clearer shared language about the EA roles and responsibilities. We wanted to focus on a stronger understanding of teacher-EA dynamics and how those can support student success. And we wanted to create some tangible resources and supports for staff to reference as reminders of what they were learning. And so what we ended up doing was creating a EA learning community. And in our first year, we met every single week before school, once a week, for about 10-15 minutes. And in that time, we tackled a lot of professional learning themes that you can see on screen here, looking at the functions of behavior. How can we identify the functions of behavior and support students based on that information? We looked at some PD from Shelley Moore, specifically the evolution of inclusion and what does inclusion really mean at its core. We looked at strategies for strengthening EA practice, and that is from Learning for All Alberta. We looked at strategies for engaging neurodiverse learners, strategies for optimizing our understanding of ADHD, We did TAC Pack training to support students with sensory needs. We looked at our sensory room in our school and how we could utilize that the best way possible. And we also looked at universal strategies for speech and language development, OT, and PT as well. We had a lot of success in our first year, but there was some feedback from our EAs around, as Dave mentioned earlier, what they were learning in this learning community didn't always translate to what teachers were doing in their classroom. And so we noticed there was a bit of misalignment. So recently we have added teachers into our learning community, and we now have a collaborative teacher EA learning community that we host at our school twice a month. We've expanded the time a little bit. We now meet for 25 minutes before school twice monthly. The first meeting of every month is dedicated to professional learning. And the second meeting of every month provides EAs and teachers with time to sit down and talk about how they're going to actualize and operationalize that learning in their classroom and what exactly that can look like. Some of the successes of this project have been some of the tangible resources that we've created, including, as shown on the screen, our What If Playbook, which really looks at consistent responses for common challenges. It breaks down what are some of the things we see from our students across the school, K through 12. What is the teacher's role in responding to that? What is the EA's role in responding to that? And how can we work together to collaboratively support student success? So that really is kind of the first part of this project. The second part really looked at improving our onboarding processes. When I started at the school, it was very similar to what Dave explained, where we would hire an EA. They would have a very limited amount of time to sit down with school leadership, teachers, and the expectation really was that they were in the classroom as soon as possible working with students. But sometimes that left gaps in their knowledge base and their understanding of what their role really should look like with students and what tools and strategies they can use to best support students. And so together with my school principal, we looked at creating an onboarding system to help support the new EAs that we hired, but we actually also put all of our currently employed EAs through this onboarding system as well. Part of that was to gather feedback, but it was also to ensure that they weren't missing any pieces of information. The first step in this process was to create a staff onboarding handbook, which goes through some of the, I would say, smaller things like what is the dress code when you start working at the school, and goes into more deeper information about what do you do if you have ideas to support kids, who can you talk to, and all of those things. And so it allowed us to outline what's important for an EA to know, and it gave us also a document that we could reference when we brought new staff into our school to ensure we had alignment in practice, but also to help us as school leadership ensure that we weren't missing any valuable pieces of information. The other part of this onboarding process was really looking at time for training before EAs went into the classroom. And so what we've started doing out in Milk River is we are having a mandated minimum half-day training before EAs go into the classroom. Currently, they are sitting down with me for that training, and we go through some professional learning, and we also have used that opportunity to sit down and go through student documents like behavior plans, ISPs. And part of that process also is giving EAs and teachers time to sit down. So during that half day, we'll take an hour of time where I'll actually go into a teacher's classroom and cover their classroom while they go and sit down with the EA that's going to be joining them in their classroom and talk about what that collaborative practice is going to look like. The final piece of that onboarding process is looking at mentorship opportunities for EAs. And Dave, if you go back a couple of slides, one more, please. Yeah, right there. We have a reflection and discussion question tool that we used for peer mentorship. So as part of this onboarding process, we made sure that every new EA entering our school had the opportunity to mentor another EA in our school outside of that half day of training with me. It was an additional add-on that allowed them to see how that learning they did with me, those conversations they had with teachers, to see what that actually looked like in the classroom. And after doing so, we were able to sit down and go through this document together. As I mentioned, we had all of our EAs go through this process, which was really incredible. So they all got a chance to be part of this mentorship process. And as part of that, they got to be both the mentor and the mentee. They got to do both roles and then come together with me, go through that reflection and discussion guide, and talk a lot about what were they noticing? What were some of the great things they were seeing? What could they learn from one another, and how can they use that in their classroom practice? A lot of this work is connected to research that I've been doing for my master's program. I'm looking at professional learning for my master's capstone at the EA and teacher level. And research shows that there are lots of positive impacts of training. And many of those impacts we're seeing at the school level as well. Consistency in practice across classrooms, improved onboarding processes really prepared our staff for classroom entry and ensured that they are confident and well equipped for their role. We're seeing a lot less of the same reoccurring problems when we have new EAs come into classrooms because of this onboarding process. We also have improved EA confidence and role clarity, stronger collaboration between teachers and EAs because they have that opportunity to sit down together as part of the onboarding process, and also because they have the opportunity to work collaboratively in our learning community meetings. And the most wonderful and impactful piece of this is that we have more consistent and effective support for our students, which really is the end goal here. This data was collected through an action research project that I did my first year of the learning community. And since then, we've also looked at street data through conversations, surveys, to really focus in on, is what we're doing actually making an impact on teachers? Is what we're doing making an impact on EAs? And of course, is what we're doing having a positive impact on student learning? And as of right now, it's an overwhelming success. We plan to continue this project moving into next year. There might be some changes as we move through and continue to evolve. This is the time of year where we're getting feedback from our teachers and EAs about what they feel went well, what they think they still need from us. And from there, we're able to make any changes that we need to. So I'd like to just take a moment to ask a few questions of all of you, if you're willing to share, just about what are some elements of this approach that you think could be adapted into your school. Because what I learned is that effective onboarding is not a one-time event. It requires mentorship, follow-up, and ongoing alignment with classroom practice. The one thing I think I would do differently if I were to start this process over is I would involve classroom teachers more directly in the design of that onboarding handbook from the get-go. We've had them look at it post creation and provide feedback. But like I said, if I could go back and do it again, I would maybe involve them in that process a lot sooner. So the first question I have for you is, what elements of this approach do you think could be adapted or scaled within your school authority? And what structural or cultural conditions would need to be in place first to make that possible? Any ideas that anyone would like to share?
Hi, Kimberly. I'm Kim from High Prairie School Division. We created something at the district level where we had an interview process and we selected some very talented EAs, one from each of our zones because of the length of our district. And so we have 3 lovely EAs who take on an EA lead role. They help them through the modules that David was talking about, but they also are able to help with that onboarding process. So they are actually working EAs within their school, but we provide sub coverage if there's a new EA at a school within their zone. So they'll pop out and help with that ongoing piece of onboarding at our other schools. So that's how we took kind of what you have and brought it to a district kind of level.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I can definitely share some examples with you, Nancy, for sure. The other question I had is, what structures or processes might your division put into place to foster greater cross-role collaboration between teachers and EAs? And how might that shift your system's overall approach to inclusive education and student support?
Well, I can share one thing connected to again, it was, I guess there were not very many I guess aspects that were positive connected to having the teacher strike in October. One thing that it allowed us to do at the division level was to connect directly with educational assistants. And as I mentioned previously, we heard lots about, hey, we want to be involved with and working elbow to elbow with our teachers on some of these things, whether it's instructional support plans, whether it's behavior support plans, whatever the case may be. And we don't get that opportunity with any consistency. We provide a day for all of the schools in our division for teachers historically to collaborate on the development of instructional support plans, EAL plans and benchmarks, so on and so forth. But traditionally, educational assistants haven't been part of that. We included them in that day. It was, shortly after teachers returned back to work. And the feedback that we got was fantastic in terms of, hey, well, we were around the table, we were part of the discussion. We had, oftentimes more intimate knowledge about strengths and interests for students, what they were able to do, what they needed support with. Anyway, that was something that came out of it that has, is helping to guide future thinking about how we provide those opportunities at the system level.
Nancy?
I was just going to share that years ago, we put in the structure that all of our educational assistants are paid once a month on the professional learning day that teachers are available. And thinking that was a really good structure, that, okay, there's no students, they'll have time to work together, but we're learning and appreciate the time today to be able to think how to do this even more effectively, that we do need to still be very intentional, because to just put the time and think people are using it in a manner that will impact their efficacy, their skills, is silly. Like, there are things that we do as a division. I know that they're not with students at that time, so I can pull and I can do specific training. But I think we're just learning the intentionality and the direction that we need to provide for that time is really important, because some of our schools are doing a fantastic job of it. And those EAs, we're getting the feedback that they do. They feel like they're part of the community. They're getting what they need to do their jobs. And others that are not maybe being so intentional, that we were getting the same feedback. So I think the biggest learning is that intentionality.
For sure. And that's why we found a lot of success with our bi-monthly schedule, because we have that targeted professional learning time, and that those learning themes come from our system level priorities, our school priorities, but also the EA and teacher growth plans that they submit and what they want to learn and feel like they need to learn. And so it does help us be really intentional in our practice when we have that moment for that professional learning before we provide them with the time to sit down and collaborate with how they're going to use that learning in their daily practice. I also saw in the chat that people would like some examples of EA handbooks. So I'll just share. I did share about the onboarding handbook that we have, but at our school, we also have, we just call them green folders. It's not a very creative name, but they are green duotangs where we house any important information. So we have one green folder for each EA. They're given it at the beginning of the year and it's theirs to keep. We have some human services pieces included in there, like their timetable. We have our supervision schedule, our fire drill and lockdown procedures, and those kinds of things. But in that green folder, we also have a document from Horizon School Division that outlines the EA roles and responsibilities. We have our onboarding handbook, and then any other professional learning that we do throughout the year, any tangible resources from that, including that what if playbook I mentioned earlier. EAs all get a copy of that to go in their green folder so that they can reference it as they need. We also provide EAs with copies of student documents. We just ask that their green folder always stays at the school so that we don't have any concerns about confidential information getting out of the school. But they have a copy of important student documents in that folder as well, again, for them to reference. So every few months, as we do ISP updates or behavior plan updates or EAL benchmarks, I'll bring new copies to the EAs. We'll switch them out so that they're always there to access. And again, that just helps the EAs be intentional in their practice as well. Does anyone have any additional questions for myself or even Dave? If you do have questions or you want to reach out, my email is there. Dave's is as well. You can always reach out and I'd be happy to share some examples with you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Kimberly, for sharing what you're doing at your school with all of us today. You really highlighted a couple of things that are very important in this work, with the intentionality and consistency being those big words of, and what does that look like in our practice. The other one that is very evident that you also mentioned is just that relationship between the teacher and the EA, and how do we go about fostering that with healthy processes that are in place. And we really appreciate the story today of Horizon School Division. So thank you so much to David and Kimberly for sharing. So this brings us to the end of the presentations for today. So reflecting on our PD today allows us to synthesize and the expert perspective shared, and identify some specific high impact shifts that make sense for your context. So we know that context is a big factor in all of this when you're going to provide some system changes or supports for anything that you would like for your system to be better at. And so context is really key in that. And we do respect that today. And just on the slide here today, just to turn today's insights into results, it can simply be choosing one immediate action for today, such as scheduling a 15-minute co-planning meeting with your team. Yeah, and then moving on to something that you'd like to do in the next coming weeks, which is a short-term action. It could be where you create and distribute an EA survey, or it could be a long-term action where you prepare a strategic EA plan for the coming school year. So really, we know that there's different journeys out there and we're learning from one another, and that's what this is all about. And just a reminder to everyone who's participating today that there's a second part to this this series for educational assistance. And we are going to hear some stories of practice that focus on the systemic support for professional growth, for strengthening the collaborative core, and research informed next steps. And we have presenters from three school districts that are going to be presenting in our next series, which is a week from today. So if you enjoyed today, please make sure that you join us and register for next week. And just before we go, I would just like to thank our CAS Professional Learning just for this opportunity today. Thank you, Edgar Schmidt, for all the work you did in the fall with the survey and just providing us with that study. And thank you again to Terry Lynn Duncan, who is not with us today, but she's the one who contacted me and said we got an excellent story of practice here, and we're so grateful to her for reaching out. And we also want to thank our tech support, Rogan Bowen Harper. Thank you so much for being here. And especially thank you to all of you here today, just for being here. It just shows your commitment to wanting to make things better for all of our students across Alberta. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day, everyone.